Welcome to the Post Shift Podcast, your raw look at the hospitality industry, brought to you by SHC. What is happening, Post Shifters? Welcome back to another episode of the Post Shift Podcast. Because I'm your host, Shawn Soole. Today's episode is a really good one. Usually I do my little advice rants on Tuesday, but I'm sort of finding a nice little middle ground now with going from 5 days a week to back to the regular 2. And we'll slide in some rants, but this one is a great episode with Miles Jones from the Campari Group. And the reason why I really wanted to sit down and chat to Miles is that with my work with craft spirits in BC, along with lots of small brands, with marketing and branding and so on and so forth, I really wanted to get down to the nitty and gritty about Campari and Aperol as brands and liquid in particular, because it's only been in the last 5 years that both these brands have sort of exploded across the board, across Canada, across the US. The Aperol Spritz has gone from 0 to 60 in a space of 5 years. And really, to get a brand that is both very obscure and not exactly macro exception from 0 to however many thousands of cases they're doing now in North America is kind of something that I think a lot of small brands can really listen to and take away from, whether you're making a gin, a vodka, or whiskey, a random vermouth. I think there's a lot of nuggets in this episode that really show how you can take a brand from being obscure and unknown to being as Miles puts it, Aperol Spritz is the most Instagrammable drink in the world, in a space of 5 years, 10 years. So I think it's a really good episode. Please listen all the way through, because there is some really great nuggets at the very end, especially dealing with craft distilleries in the province. I hope you really enjoy this episode, guys. Thanks as always for the support. I'll see you soon. Bye.
Perfect. Yes, great to be here. Thank you so much for having me on. I know you and I have laughed about this for a while, but I am Miles Jones. I'm the Senior Commercial Manager for Western Canada for Campari Group. You and I have met, I think it was going on 5 years ago. We tried to figure that out. Yep. Sounds about right. No, so that's me, and it's a pleasure to be here to chat with you.
So, how long have you been with Campari now?
I've been with Campari for 5.5 years. Prior to that, I was with Peter Malzinski Agencies, now known as PMA, for 15 years. And I ran Manitoba, Saskatchewan for PMA for a period of time. And then I got the opportunity to come over to Campari about 5.5 years ago when they went out on their own and set up their own agency based on the purchase of 40 Creek Canadian Whiskey, everybody's favorite Canadian whiskey. So once they acquired that, the mass was there with the additional of brands like Appleton and Sky Vodka in the market, and obviously the Aperols and Camparis of the world now. It created the mass needed to go to market directly, and I was lucky enough to come on board then 5.5 years ago, and I managed at the time the on-premise business for Canada. So I was a national on-premise manager for the first 4 years, and then transitioned into a role as the Senior Commercial Manager for British Columbia, which was new to me to get back into the retail side of the business, which I love. It's exciting times, and obviously BC is a very exciting market for me. Vancouver, Victoria, Kelowna, they've all got such great scenes and things going on, but not just on a cocktail front, but just in general as places to visit and be. So great to be part of that in BC. And then just recently I was lucky enough to take on Alberta and Saskatchewan as well. So that's brand new to me, and I'm running into week 2 of that, so I'm pretty excited about that opportunity as well.
So how long was Campari with PMA before? So you had a long-term relationship with Campari, with PMA, and then with Campari standalone?
Correct, yeah. So obviously Campari owns Appleton Rum, which was sort of the PMA's, I would say, breakout spirit when I started there. It was sort of the main part of the ship, and then with William and Grant's purchasing the Gibson's opportunity as well, that built that brand up as well. So PMA's opportunities as well, sort of, so as they grew as a company, I was able to grow with them. So I know those brands quite well from my time there, and now coming to the full commercial side of it, and owning the brands versus representing the brands makes such a big difference, and just sort of learning how the business side works to that, and the small nuances and differences of how the organizations work. It's been great. It's been fantastic. But yeah, my history is with the brands.
So Campari and Aperol in specificness, I think that's what we're really going to focus on, because I think
Because they're your favorites.
Well, all your brands are my favorites, but for some reason,
sure.
Campari has so many brands that I do align with. But Campari and Aperol are always close to my heart because I remember when I first started taking over Clive's in 2009. Even before that, like, I remember coming to Canada. Actually, I'm not sure if I ever told you my Americano story, but the very first time I came to Canada was 2006, and I got a bar shift at Moxie's in Victoria. And my very first day, my very first bar shift, an order comes through on the ticket printer saying Americano. And I'm like, this is amazing. Someone's ordered an Americano. The first drink I get to make in Canada is an Americano. This just sets the tone for the rest of my career here in Canada after coming from Australia. So I make an Americano, soda, Rosso, Campari, soda, orange slice, put it up on the bar top, put the shit underneath it, and I ding. The server comes over, she's like, what's this? I'm like, that's an Americano. And I was so proud of myself that I whacked out this beautiful Americano as my very first drink on my very first date.
Cocktail. And they were looking for a coffee.
Yes, they were. And I'm just like, okay, you mean a long black, right? And they're like, no, that's called an Americano. Can you make me an Americano? But like, I've always had an affiliation with the brand, but really, it's all these kids are very lucky now, and I call them the kids because they're in their early 20s because Campari and Aperol and all these different Amaros are available on the market, but that's not the way it was until about 5 years ago. It's been a pretty short span since Aperol Spritz and Campari took over the Canadian psyche.
Well, yeah, I mean, and I think that's part of the, Aperol's growth rates across the globe are, beyond recognition. It's insane. It's the hottest brand in the world, right? So to bring that to North America was always going to be a challenge, but we believe in the process. We believe in the way we're directing the brand. It is an on-premise piece. It's a vibe. It's almost a culture to itself, and it's really developed into that. I know it's sort of dominating the brunch world right now, and which is exciting for us, but there's so much more that can do. And it is ironically the most Instagrammed cocktail in the world is the Aperol Spritz, and the orange gleaming lights, and it just has this hue about it, and it's low alcohol and it tastes great, so you can enjoy them and still get yourself home after one. And that to me is really the direction. Well, is the direction that the business is going, and it's trying to find these little niches and places where brands like that work. Separate to that, with Campari, I mean, none of this happens without Campari being established in market. So, you look at British Columbia alone, and there's a 50% growth rate on Aperol as we speak. I mean, we're going to sell close to 10,000 cases, 9-liter cases in British Columbia alone this year. To put that in perspective, 5 years ago, that was around 700 cases. So it'll give you guys an idea of where that brand's gone. And Campari's been one of those ones that slowly has chugged along over the course of the last 10 to 15 years. And, you sold 2,000 here, 21, 2021, 2021. And in the last 4 years, based on the Negroni Week and a bunch of different pieces we're doing and the popularity in your globe and your world and your sphere of influence in the cocktail world, you've seen it become so central to what your world is about, which is, creating different flavor sets and having that sort of standard bitter that everyone can use as a go-to. It's really, really blossomed. And like I said, I mean, I think when we started, we were 2,000 cases Campari, and right now our MAT is over 6,000. So it's been a great run, and Italy's hot. Everything about that is hot. So it's exciting times.
And I saw how many people apparently I heard a lot of liquor store on retail side of things that they just couldn't keep up with the demand of Campari when the lockdown happened. That everybody was coming in and buying Cinzano Rosso, Campari, and a gin.
Yeah, it's and it's interesting that you say that. So we saw. I mean, Campari, on an annual basis, Campari is growing in British Columbia at around 15%. The last 3 months, we're at 45%. Now, the business itself is up over 25%. But when you look at the whole process, that's the staple. And you know what? Give full credit to the bartending community. Give full credit to the cocktail community. It's your ability to get the story across and your ability to define, what Campari does. That they can go home and feel comfortable making these at home now. And that's a full credit to you. That did not exist 5 years ago. We didn't have somebody who wanted to try to make that cocktail 5 years ago. And, the online education piece and the efforts that, that bartender community puts forward for every brand. But so, the Campari has been one of the greatest evaluation, or greatest, what's the term I'm looking for? You'll have it. But, it's been one of the greatest pieces for us is because you guys have embraced it and where it's got to today.
Well, I think that's the interesting thing. And I think you and I have had conversations in the past about the true scheme of macro and how long-term effects of on-premise affect retail sales. But really, at the end of the day, it's when you start seeing that dynamic shift, you really can see how it slid into the macro. But take it back to 5 years ago when Campari Canada made that massive move, absolutely massive move 5-6 years ago to go out on their own, which in Canada, we both know it's an absolute nightmare to already find reps and then do it yourself.
It's a big country, and it's hard. It's again, when you've got a flat sales organization and you're going out to find new folks and find new people, it can be a challenge.
So what happened 5 or 6 years ago? What sort of conversations were there? Because obviously in Italy, being an Italian company, Campari and Aperol are second nature. It's a way of life. But
I think that. Yeah, so again, Campari's got a very interesting global strategy. It's 50% organic growth and 50% via takeover or via merger, M&A, right? So for all intents and purposes, like you saw, for Canada, we needed to find that the workhorse that could get really thing to be part of the increase. And 40 Creek was available, and 40 Creek at the time was a brand that was growing immensely in Ontario and Eastern Canada, and it was doing well in Western Canada, but didn't have the same cliche. So we saw an opportunity in Western Canada with it that to really drive that brand set. And you add 40 Creek in with Appleton Rum and the Sky Vodkas and, the Apples and Campari and even brands like Espolòn that have come from nowhere to really sort of take a step up into the world that we see today. And, add that to the fact that we purchased Grand Marnier 2.5 years ago. And now all of a sudden we've got this, and Wild Turkeys and all these little, really authentic, real brands that just give us this, a very different mindset and a different way to approach the business. And for us, I tell you what, one of my greatest days of my life was when we sat in that meeting in November of 2014, it would have been, maybe 2015, if I'm never good with name or dates, but I think it was 2014. We had that in a meeting in Toronto and said, okay, guys, how are we building this team? What do we want to look for? And how do we want to go about that? And, we laugh about Camparistas and being, part of Campari as a family, but that's who we look for. We look for people that, we'll take a person with work ethic and someone who really just wants to learn and be engaged and be part of a team over someone with 5 to 10 years experience, because we know that we can show them the value of what we sell and how we go about it and really, for all intents and purposes, massage someone differently than others do. And to me, it showed through the pandemic. I mean, it's been a very interesting 3 months for everyone. And, as a company, Campari Canada, we didn't, there were no speaking of layoff. There would be no chance we did any of those things because, the people that are struggling are our clients. It's not us. I mean, I'm not talking about my retail clients. I'm talking about, the on-premise and, how do we help them right now? And, I know fiscally people had to make change and they had to, take different pieces away while sales reps went on the ground. But that's just, it's not something would ever even approach our team. Our human resources are number one value, and that's how we truly look at it.
Do you think this sort of mentality has been the reason that I've heard both sides of the story when it comes to retail sales, that it's either bargain basement stuff or super high end, and really the middle area has sort of stagnated, but it doesn't seem like any of the Campari brands have had this sort of level of, and especially the obscure ones like Campari and Cynar and Cinzano, they haven't stopped in the retail sector. There hasn't been a slowdown. If anything, it's picked up on the retail side.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'd like to honestly honor my teams that work with us, because they're the ones who ultimately drive that, right? They're the ones who own those relationships and own the relationships, and that's what's given us the real step up, in the West for sure. And that to me is where, let's be honest, if somebody works hard for you, you're going to work hard for them, and that's always been my mentality. It's the mentality I teach my team. It's how we go about our day. And we want to be here to support you. And, it's got to be financially right for both parties. But, we will make you money if you want to help us make money. And that's how we go about our day.
What do you think has been the biggest strength of the Aperol and the Campari brand in the last 5 or 6 years that has sort of built it? Because really, you haven't seen other spirits in that category, talking about Fernet Branca in Canada or Ramazzotti or the more obscure Amaros, sort of see the same success rate as Campari and Aperol. Where do you see that sort of weight and that transfer over into the macro?
I think it does come down to drink strategy. It comes down to cocktail strategy. At the end of the day, Fernet's a fantastic product, but it's got a very, very strong taste to it, right? So, it's a different taste profile than some of the pieces we have. Aperol is really it's so approachable. And, with the bitter trends from, you even look at Starbucks. I mean, the bitter trends that they've helped develop, like, people's palates are changing and they're growing up for all intents and purposes. I mean, something like Campari, which is, again, a brand that you can, it's been around, it's a global icon, right? It's almost as much about fashion as it is about the actual drink itself. And, the combination of how it runs and how it operates, and even you've seen our marketing pieces and what we do and see. So that to me it's just endeared itself to the market maybe differently. And I think that, again, because we have had the ability to expand the rest of the portfolio around it in North America, that's what we've really been able to drive. And a direct sales force. I mean, at the end of the day, our competition might have anywhere from 3 to 7 vodkas. Well, we've got Sky and we've got Prince Igor, so we've got one that's an entry level that you guys can go out and pick up and, is going to be a quality product at the base of price. And then you've got Sky that is, again, it's a California vodka. It's got its own sort of place in the world. And it's a little more expensive. And that we have 2. Some people have, like they're literally flipping through a book with their clients going, oh, you don't want this one. I got this one. And this one's going to be on sale next week, but this one's on sale now. So how many cases can I sell you? And that's not how we operate. Like, again, we just have a very different approach to the market.
Have you found that approach to the market, to a degree, is sometimes counterintuitive to the way that everybody else behaves? Have you found that it's sticking to that mantra and that mission statement to push forward and actually achieve the long-term goals that you sort of set out?
Well, I mean, again, you're nothing without your brands, right? So your brands really do define what you are and as a company, right? So again, if we're genuine and we're sincere and we're authentic as people selling in authentic and sincere and genuine brands, that's going to give us leverage long term. I truly believe that. I mean, again, life is about relationships. It's about establishing positivity with people and trust, right? And if you can establish that trust with your buyers and, you're that person that comes through each time, your product might be slightly more expensive than the rest of the competition, but they know that you're there for them as much as they're there for you. You're going to win. And we will never outpay out incentivize our customers. We will never, do that compared to our competitive set. But what we will is like I said, I mean, we're the Lannisters of the alcohol business. We pay our bills. So, we want to promote with people and we want to be forthright in how we do it. And you know what, we understand the value of the on-premise and its marketing opportunities and, people like yourself and the community, the bartending community to which you're involved in. And that's why we give back to them. I mean, you saw it through COVID with donations and different pieces we did. And I'm really proud of the way we treated our partners in the on-prem through that.
What's been the biggest aha moment at a bartending event that you're like, oh, now I understand why everybody loves this product so much?
Well, I mean, listen, if I could pump your own tires, it was probably sitting in a room in Victoria in February and looking at I got to get this wrong because I'm never great at this stuff, and 5 or 6 different locally based restaurants competing for an opportunity with Campari and our products to go to, and at Appleton specifically, and the new Appleton 8-year, which is a stunning liquid, but the new Appleton 8-year, and watching them compete and the level of effort they put in as an organization and as a group, right? And they were so proud of each other and what they created drink-wise, and to me, that was a bit of an aha moment that one brand like Appleton can still resonate with these guys, even though Appleton, again, like it's not central to the cocktail culture, but they embrace it because of our centrality in the culture. So for me, that was that moment where I looked around and went crazy. I think from an Aperol standpoint, what moment was it? I was lucky enough, and you were lucky enough to attend with me, but I went on 4 different junkets to Manchester when we sponsored Manchester United. And I remember walking into one event in Manchester we had a pitch day where we got to all play and kick around the ball on the field. And Aperol sponsored them for the better part of 3 years. And I remember going out onto this event and just seeing the sheer size of what they put together and realizing, yeah, this is a massive global brand. And you and I got to sit and watch a game from the Aperol suite. And that, in arguably one of, if not the most famous stadium in soccer, one of, and there we were central to this moment and enjoying this moment as a group and cheering these spritzes. And it just felt right. And it felt like, okay, like we're onto something here. This really is that moment. It's that celebratory piece that you want to be a part of. And, we got to do it. Unfortunately, it was a 0-0 tie, but we got to do it in 1-1 we got to watch. But it was pretty fantastic. And that was great, again, even that watching, even the clients we had together that day and the way, that moment changed for you about the brand and changed for, Michael and James and all these guys from different areas all across the country. And, we literally had people from Toronto, Regina, Calgary, Victoria on that trip. And everyone was just like, this is amazing, right? Like this moment is amazing. And I want to replicate this. And we've gone about doing that. Like I said, we're 3 times the size today of Aperol than we started and 3 times the size of Campari as well. I can't be prouder of what the team in BC has done and Western Canada now too. It's the brand is on fire.
Yeah, that was an amazing junket trip, and that was 2015. And even then, the Aperol Spritz hadn't like sort of I say jumped the shark, but hadn't really come into the psyche. It was something that I know that we at Clive's pushed and Jumbo pitched during the summertime and that sort of thing. But then it was that quick sort of, and 5 years is quick in the spirits game to go from like 0 to 60 to going from what's Aperol to it's the most Instagrammable drink in the world.
Yeah, you bet. And you're seeing everywhere from national chain accounts and others really embrace that. And it's the local places that have made the difference for that brand. And it's understanding that we're here to support you. And that's like again like. What that brand can provide your clients from noon until 6 p.m. or 8 p.m. most nights there's nothing better because you can add that on and have an appetizer and have that little in Quebec they call it the 5 cassette or the happy hour, whatever you want to call it. It just gives that moment so much more joy, and that's our thought process.
So what's the big plan across the board for all the brands going post COVID? Let's dive into. Obviously, it's difficult to do marketing during a pandemic when everybody's locked down because it's got to have a certain level of tone to it. But what's the plan once these restaurants start reopening? And the amount of support you've already given to the industry has been huge, especially for a brand that, in perception-wise, is big, but in the grand scheme of things, is still quite a small house compared to like the Diageos and the Bacardis. What's the plan for the next 12 months to 18 months?
Well, I think that the plan is just to accelerate the orange wave, to be completely honest with you, from an Aperol standpoint. For other brands, you're going to see that the new launch of Appleton. So we have a brand new package coming out across the board from Appleton. It's a premium focus on there. Big changes coming for Sky soon too. More focus for us on Grand Marnier because I think we sort of haven't given that brand the love it needs, especially in your world. Such a good mixer and such a great base for so many classic and beautiful cocktails. We need to do better at that for your sake and for our sake. That's one that, I central on. And 40 Creek to me, that's Canada's most award-winning whiskey, bar none. You can hear from others, but the reality is, Confederation Oak is now it just got voted as awarded the best liquid of the decade for Canadian whiskey at the Whiskey Awards. And that is to me for the $80 you spend on Confederation Oak versus some of these single malts that people are buying, it's dumb. Yeah, that's how it goes. And to get double barrel now at the $42 mark, as opposed to $60, and we've got the new clear bottle, I think we're seeing the distribution of that go up. And, those are two of Canada's most award-winning whiskeys, and one's 40, one's 80, and to me, they're both a huge value compared to its competitive set. Exciting times. And obviously for us, I'm excited to see what Espolòn does. I mean, there's another brand we haven't really even touched on, and that's growing at 40 to 50% across the country as well. So it's exciting times.
Well, I love Espolòn. I think Espolòn was my house tequila in Singapore. Like, Espolòn's always been one of my favorite tequilas. And it's got great packaging, and it had sort of a push in the US a couple of years ago, and then it died down a little bit. But I've been a big fan of Espolòn.
Espolòn in the U.S. is still one of the top 5 fastest growing brands in the entire country. So it's we're seeing a bit of the spillover, especially into BC. But we're online in Canada to push in British Columbia to push almost 5,000 cases of Espolòn. Like it's fantastic. And again, the liquid for value again is there, and the packaging second to none.
Yeah, Grand Marnier is a tough one. That one is I don't envy on having to sort of re-kick that off.
Yeah, you know what? But again, it comes back to an education piece of Grand Marnier and understanding that 50% of what you're drinking is cognac. Mm-hmm. So everyone goes, oh well, it's an expensive triple sec. No, sir, that's not what it is. So there's cognac in that drink, and the Grand Margarita and French 75, so that's our cocktail strategies for Grand Marnier, and I think you're going to see those get back on board. But the Grand Margarita, I mean, again, to me, Espolòn and Grand Marnier, and then you add some simple syrup and a shot of lime in there, and you give that a good hard shake and pour onto ice, and it's a beautiful thing.
So let's take it from the macro to the micro, because I do deal with so many small brands, and you being based here in BC, you've seen the explosion of small distilleries, and I do think there's a certain level of application. I think we're with the craft distilling scene that I have to deal with on a daily basis. It's very passion driven, very rarely business driven, and they sort of almost shun the ways of the macro brands because they want to be the mom and pop crafty sort of passion project.
Right until they go to sell them. Sorry, that's my little tongue in cheek.
It always is. Like that's the thing is like I love this brand.
It's my baby right until I sold it. But that's all good.
But how do you see, like, especially I think you're the perfect person to ask this sort of question about, because you've adopted brands that were either super obscure, China, Campari, Aperol, Vermouth, even still super obscure, brands that sort of not had fallen on hard times, but had needed a solid revigoration, a la Grand Marnier and Wild Turkey and Appleton. Mm-hmm. What sort of things that would you say are like top 3 things that small brands should be looking at when it comes to sort of marketing to their demographic?
Well, I mean, listen, marketing has changed. In the last 5 years, we've literally gone from, print to digital, from TV to digital. It's not, the world's a very different place now on how you touch a consumer. But that said, I mean, to me, the only way you will ever build a brand is if you hand sell it yourself. And that's, you look at a guy like John Hall, who literally spent, every Thursday, Friday, Saturday afternoon or evening in a store somewhere in rural Ontario, making 40 Creek what it is today. That's what he did. And he went, and again, like, never saw his family, never doing those things. He just literally ground around selling it till it became this sort of cult brand that, went from 50 to 75 to 100 to 150 to 300. And it just became this massive brand. And, it's doable. You look at the guys, Nude, Neutral, all these type of brands, and, concentrating on what you're good at too is another piece. Like I would absolutely suggest that if you're good at vodka, you make vodka. If you're good at whiskey, you make whiskey. These guys trying to make 500 different spirits and different pieces and trying to sell this or that, like the second you weigh yourself down and put yourself into too many categories, it's no different than distribution companies, right? I mean, if a distribution company has 550 SKUs that they got to try to sell you, that's a lot harder than the guy like me with 50. So, if you're looking at it, I just think that and there are some incredible distilleries in the Okanagan, even where I live, and I've been, I'm privy to try a few of them. To get to the mass production they need is again, they're going to need to sell their product, and most of it's going to need to go out the door, and it's going to take on and catch on elsewhere. It's like anything branding wise, right? It's got to be great liquid, it's got to be good packaging, and you've got to be willing to put 15 hours a day in for 6 to 7 days a week for 8 to 15 years, and 1 in 5 of you will get lucky. That is the reality of that business. Now, you could be passionate about it, you could be all those things, but the reality is you need quality liquid that's going to stand up to the big guys, right? And I've tried those. Trust me, I've tried enough vodkas to know that there is good vodka available. There is good whiskey that is made in Canada, and especially the gins. I mean, you look at some of the gins that get produced that out there that are really, incredible and different, and they're in a very they've gone a separate way to try to create something unique, and I like that too. Like, look at the success of Empress; it's incredible. So you give them full credit too, right? So, and Dillon's even if you're looking into the Ontario world, right? So those are two great examples of guys that have found the road and stuck to it and made things happen.
That's why I always I mention, and I think it goes across all the boards when it comes to being a bartender to a distiller. Like, everybody sees 40 Creek as an overnight success, but it was 15,
it was 18 years.
The 15 years of like grinding and pounding to make it happen and to make it work, and then success has happened over the last 5.
Well, no, success certainly happened. Yeah, exactly, correct. I mean, if you want to talk to, a guy like Bill Ashburn, who's got the history of it. They literally made the cheapest wine humanly possible just to get the business rolling, so that they could age the liquid to get into the barrels, so that they could actually get the product they wanted, rather than buying bulk liquid. Over the course of long term, they have to. The investment level is massive. To do it right, the investment level is massive. But that's also why someone will come along and purchase you for hundreds of millions of dollars. Because at some point you're going to build that value to where it's at, and that's what happened with 40 Creek. And people forget that 40 Creek also had Prince Igor, which was another 145 to 150,000 case brand of vodka. That's not insignificant. It's a top 10 brand in Canada for vodka. So those two combined gave, again, to roll the story back to the start, is what gave the ability to really make this thing move forward with Campari in Canada.
Do you think there's going to be a shift to bigger brands buying craft brands in Canada shortly? Because you've seen the shift happen in the US. And obviously 40 Creek was the original craft distillery. I know that's a big point that you guys are trying to market. Do you think there's going to be a bigger push over the next 5 to 10 years of big brands like Campari, Bacardi, Diageo buying up craft distilleries in Canada?
It's certainly a possibility. If you're Bacardi and you don't own Canadian whiskey, you're certainly going to want someone to step up and, get to 60, 80, 100,000 cases where you can buy something that's got a natural flow to it. Do I see Diageo doing it? I don't know what their need would be with Crown Royal in the portfolio already. I don't know that they would want to seek past that. And the same would obviously go for the Wiser's groups as well. They do more creativity internally than most. So I'd imagine them looking to purchase brands wouldn't be the same level. And again, this is just a guess. It's not educated by any stretch. But, what I think you're going to see, 1 or 2 of these gin houses get snapped up because I think that there's probably 2 or 3 of them, I'd say, in Canada, 2 for sure, maybe 3, that are getting to that critical mass, right, where it's like now someone's going to have to invest 15, 20 million to expand their business. Where's that coming from? Do they want to take that step? Do they want to sell now, or do they want to move forward? So people forget. These things are not small enterprises to set up at full to push out significant case value. So you've got to really come. You come to a moment in time, right, where it's like, okay, I'm X amount of cases. My next step is either to sell or to find investors and lose 75% of my business anyway. So that's really so which way do you go, right?
That's a good point. Well, I want to thank you very much for your time, buddy.
Anytime. I thoroughly enjoyed this. And
this was super enlightening, because I think from I think we've had long conversations, and you're one of the people that I always give credit to, sort of educating me in learning more about the macro, about consumerism and consumer behavior at the retail level, how it reflects the on-premise behavior. Because it is like us cocktail people, we get into our little social media bubbles of we're awesome and everything we're doing is changing the world. But then you just go stand at a liquor store for a couple of hours and watch what people actually still buy. And you're like, the sacrifices I've made over the last decade have done nothing.
No, they've certainly done a ton. But again, I mean, at the end of the day, 65% of what we sell in Canada is vodka or Canadian whiskey. Mm-hmm. So, of all spirits, that's what the numbers are. So, don't ever put yourself into that piece. Again, education has been what you guys have been able to provide, and entertainment, and that safe spot where someone can have a cocktail, and like obviously we won't get into the depth of Negronis, but you make a Negroni. 99 times out of 100 better have Campari in it. 100 out of 100 in my opinion, but we won't get into that. But my point is that, that is central to that. And, somebody goes to any one of your places and they ask for a Negroni, and they're going to have a very similar tasting drink to what they can do with that. And that's full value to you guys, right? So, listen, hey, you've taught me as much as I've taught you, believe me. So I really appreciate our friendship. And it's been great to be part of your podcast. I really appreciate it.
Well, I'm looking forward to Negroni week in September now, is it? It's been pushed to September?
Yes, please, everyone listening, please get applications in. It's in September.
What are the dates for, have you got a set date in September?
Oh, you are putting me on the spot. I don't have it in front of me, but I believe it's the first week of September.
Okay, that's good, because I'm away on the last week of September. So, and I don't want to be away. I was away for Negroni week last year, and I actually did a conference call, video chat with all the competitors in Victoria before they competed, and so from Singapore. So, but yeah, perfect. Hopefully we see each other before Negroni week, and I really appreciate your time and being on the show.
You bet. Take care, Shawn. Always a pleasure. That's your listening.
Thanks, buddy. Bye.
Welcome to the Potion Podcast, your raw look at the hospitality industry, brought to you by SHC.